What is going on, everybody? My name is Dean and welcome back to another video about AFL 23, and today I'm going to tell you what I thought of the game when I played it last week at the launch event. So I'm going to throw some gameplay up on the screen, but this is actually a really hard game to judge early just because of the version we were playing on. Now, I mean, the version we're playing on, we're told it's pretty old, and obviously pre-release, so that's why I don't want to show like too much. Because this is a build that was thrown together just for this event. Lots of features were locked, and likely lots of code was probably removed from the game so that it actually just worked and didn't break, and people could have an experience of the game without it being like too in-depth or the final version of the game. Like the version we were playing on didn't even have final HUD, didn't have like commentary in it. There was a lot of things that were just not what you would expect in a final version of the game, and that's why it's kind of really hard to judge and comment on those. So with that in mind, and the things that we're told that are being worked on in terms of AI and player movement and things like that, let me focus on the bits of the game that are the closest to being finished, or at least appear to be finished, and what the final product might resemble, and that way I can give you sort of the basic idea of all of the good bits. And then hopefully the other stuff is still being worked on, or it's in a better position than what it should be. So let's talk about the first thing, which is the visual presentation. And I think this is probably one of the standout features of the game. And I know a lot of people say, it's PS2 graphics, yada, yada, yada. But it's not. And you can clearly see that in all of the trailers and things. There might not be some perfect likenesses, but majority of your star players are going to be treated with, super realism. And then everyone else is still has a full face scan treatment, which you don't even get in FIFA. I mean, you play FIFA as the Australian team not from the World Cup or even the World Cup version, and it's not all the players are properly looking. They're just sort of a generic version of themselves, and you get the main stars of the Premier League and things that do get that full treatment. But at least in this game, every single player on an AFL list is getting the proper head treatment, which is awesome. And on that, we've seen lots of individualized celebrations that are going to be in the game from the trailer. And even yesterday, Mitch Robinson had a video where he was doing additional mocap for it. He was doing Charlie Cameron's celebration, the LeBron one. So these are things that are just going to be in the game, and it's going to make it great. I mean, when I play FIFA, you can literally choose your celebration after you score a goal. I don't think we'll probably get that in-depth with this one, but it's still, there's going to be a lot of variety, which is great. And on that, even though I only played a couple of games, I did not think I saw the same celebration more than once because there was a lot of variety. So I think that is a key as well. Is that you don't want it to feel like you're just doing the same thing again and again, which is a good plus. The other thing is that the coaches are in the game. Now, I don't know if all of the coaches were fully in the game. I think we had an Essendon coach that was not the final Essendon coach, but Hardwick was definitely in the game. I definitely saw Alistair Clarkson in the game. So clearly they've worked with not only the AFLPA, but the AFL Coaches Association to get those guys in. Hopefully that's in the final build as well, to do those quarter time cutscenes. And I guess that also means that when you have your career mode, whether that's as a player or as the coach, that coach will be involved with the team a bit more. If you get drafted to Richmond, for example, and you've got Damien Hardwick as your coach, you might have a cutscene with him telling you, hey, you're going to play your first game. Now, I don't know if that's a real thing, but I mean, if you've got the coaches in there, that would make sense, right? So I think that is what we can expect to see in AFL 23. Now, I've probably gone on about the visuals a bit too much, but let's talk about set shots, because they're probably the other main thing to take away from this, that it's hey, this is probably the final-ish version of set shots that you're going to be able to see and play, and these are great. Now, I would like to take a lot of credit for being able to change your kick type in set shots, which I love that they've put that over into this game from the previous game, which is great. Obviously, it's on the D-pad now instead of a trigger button, which is fine. And this is good. It was still a little bit buggy, but for the most part, it's a system that makes sense. You get to aim where you want. You can see the wind, kind of on the ground. There's a small little bit of wind indication on the ground as to whether or not that has a huge impact. I don't think it will. It's going to be more on your timing and your actual kick of the footy, because the wind doesn't have too much of an impact unless you're kind of playing in Hobart, where the wind is just crazy. So it's good to see that there's a couple of different elements in there. And another thing with these set shots is these are also very personalized. Now, I'm going to throw up a few screenshots here just of my gameplay. playing as Richmond. So this is Dustin Martin, Maurice Rioli Jr. and Tom Lynch with 3 different both setups and kicks for their set shot attempts. Now, as someone who goes to Richmond games every week, like, this is very obvious that Dustin Martin has a very, very similar, if not his own, set shot technique. Tom Lynch, the same thing. And visually, just the way they're standing and moving to their set shot is very personalized. And from what I've seen in other people's gameplays, this looks like it is across the board for the other teams as well, for all the big-time star players. And of course, there's like a more generic one, which I think is the Maurice Rioli Jr. one. I saw it in a couple of my players that had this set shot style technique when lining up for goal. So you can expect your buddies, your Mackay's, Kernos, obviously your Lynch, Dustin Martins. Dangerfield will probably have his own on. Hawkins, I imagine, likewise. All of your key forwards and like superstar players are probably going to have their personalized set shot animations, which is fantastic, and another little thing that makes you feel as if you are playing as those players when they are on the field. So, well done. Probably the last bit I really want to talk about here is like marking contests, because they're probably the other big major thing that impacts an AFL game. For the most part, these felt quite balanced. Like kicking the ball to the contest, obviously, very much will be ideally on where your players are positioned on the field. You want to kick to the advantage of your player, because the positioning is obviously going to have a far greater impact than actually the contested marking stat and attribute. Although I did find myself a couple times being able to take a mark from behind if my player had a bit more momentum, which is kind of realistic in a way. You watch, if you see a key forward generally get a run and jump at the ball, they're going to take the mark over the guy who's pretty stagnant at the front of the pack a lot of times. So in that case, like, again, I probably need more of an like a playthrough to give these more of a judgment. But on first thought, they were quite good and balanced in terms of being able to spoil as well a lot of the time, and just like, obviously being able to mark the ball seemed all right. There was maybe like a little bit of haptic feedback that would have been nice, but again, all that stuff will come for final build, and seems like we're on the right path. Last thing I want to talk about was not necessarily to do with the game, but more the controls, because there were so many of these that I didn't actually check out because I was too busy just trying to learn the game that I didn't actually learn the controls. And the reason I don't want to learn the controls, I'll put them up on screen now. This is why. If we ignore sort of the basic ones, the attacking, defending, set shot, because they're all your normal one. Have a look at loose ball. You've actually got a button there to smother, which is R1. Now, I don't necessarily know whether you have to like press that separately, because generally you're going to be holding R1 a lot of the time, because that's like your ball tracking button. In previous games, I think Live 1, it was triangle, you held triangle. In Evo and Evo 2, I think it was L2 was the button you held down to track the ball. So in this game, it's going to be R1, which means like you're kind of going to try and automatically smother it, unless you have to do it separately as they kick. I don't know, but I guess it's weird having that on the same button if that's not how it's going to work. The other things that I didn't try are sort of these advanced controls, which were like your clearance kick, your stab kick, but like these are the same-ish as the last game. The stab pass used to be on L2, that's now on L1. Clearance kick is now on L2. That used to just be, I think, triangle. So that's going to be one I didn't try, but I should be like probably using more often. And the clearance handball, a new one. I don't know what that does, whether that means you can get the handball out of a tackle when you do that, or whether that means that it's just a longer handball. And there's also a bounce pass, which I believe is a handball, like you're handballing it into the ground rather than kicking it into the ground. So that's obviously a different one there as well. And of course, we do have dribble kicks for goal as well, which is cool to see that make a return. So I think from that point of view, there's obviously a lot of controls that maybe we're not necessarily familiar with. And that was probably the other bit of feedback, I guess, if you're watching people play this game in the early version from the event last week, is that nobody knew a lot of these controls. Everyone's just trying to get an impression of the game, learn the game, and it doesn't necessarily reflect what a good play is going to look like once you've got your own version of the game and you're like, oh, I can do all these things now, because you'll learn it and you'll get better at it. Like, I remember Live 1 came out, I was terrible at it. I was terrible. And I think, like, once you get the hang of stringing some good plays together, and obviously being familiar with the way your team plays, because that's going to be very different for each team as well, apparently, then you'll have a really good experience. But I think from what I played early, the things that work well work really well, and the things that are not done, you can tell that they're not done. So it's, again, as I said at the top of this, it's quite difficult to give it sort of a grading or a mark. But from what is in there already, you can tell that it is on the right pathways of, like, the things that are good, the things that are not as good are clearly being worked on because of that fact. And you kind of just need to ignore some of the stuff that is completely broken because, again, it's early release. So it's not what you're going to play anyway. And there are some weird bugs in, like, cutscenes and things as well that I've seen people point out. And I'm like, yeah, but you've never played a game. Like, a lot of the people making these judgments have never played a game before it's come out or before it's, like, original patch. Because even some games you'll play it and then the day one patch will just completely change things. So I'm still very excited about this game. I cannot wait for it in a couple of weeks. And once we do get, a more hands-on of a closer to final version, I think that's when you'll really see the game flourish and be as good as it can be. Because I'm excited, and everyone who I spoke to there, also very excited, both, from a fan perspective of the people who were playing it for the first time, and those who had worked on it had also, pointed out that they're very, very happy with where it's at. So, like, I'm keen to see where it goes, but, it's an AFL game. It's not going to be perfect, but if it's pretty bloody good, and we have fun with it, then that's an absolute win. So, they're kind of what my thoughts were for my first playthrough of AFL 23 over about a 25-minute period. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this gives you some guidance over that, and goodbye.